The history of all 9 Captain Marvels. This is Nerdist Now. Throughout comics, heroes have risen, fallen, gotten edgy 1990s makeovers, and have passed their monikers on to others time and time again. You've got your Dick Grayson Batman, Kate Bishop pretty much taking over as the new Hawkeye in the MCU. Even Spider-Man has been cloned like 24 times across comics, and even in the 1970s TV show.
That's right, Peter. I'm you, and you're me, and this is a gun.
And earlier this week, the Marvels trailer gave us our first look at Carol Danvers, Kamala Khan, and Monica Rambeau under one roof. But would you be surprised if we told you there are 9 Captains Marvel from all across comics history? Hopefully not too surprised, since we did put that number in the title. But yes, the moniker of Captain Marvel began way back in the 1940s and has traded hands multiple times, as well as publishing companies. If you want to read all about it, our boy Eric Diaz has you covered over on Nerdist.com. Of course, we're going to get into the weird and wild history around all the Captain Marvels, their crossover effects, and who else we could possibly expect to pop up in the MCU. To do that, we're going to have to talk about WandaVision, Ms. Marvel, and of course, Captain Marvel. So if you don't want to be spoiled on any of that, go watch some 1970s Spider-Man and save yourself the headache.
Please, help me!
The original hero called Captain Marvel is this guy. He, who goes by the name of Shazam these days, was one of the most popular superheroes of the golden age of the 1940s. Young Billy Batson, a boy reporter for Whiz Radio, became the superheroic Captain Marvel once he uttered the magic word Shazam, the name of the wizard who granted him his powers. Which, that has to be one of the worst wizard names ever, right? How about Glorm Nightfoot? Just off the top of my head, and that's at least 5% better. From 1940 to 1950, Captain Marvel was the comic book industry's biggest hit, with spin-off titles galore. He was a certifiable cash cow for publisher Fawcett Comics, but national publications, known today as DC Comics, saw Captain Marvel as a knockoff of its own Superman and unleashed their magical powers by suing Fawcett Comics. DC eventually won, and Fawcett was forced to retire publishing Captain Marvel, leaving the name completely unused. In 1966, once the name Captain Marvel fell into public domain, a minor publisher named MF Enterprises created their own Captain Marvel, one that almost no one remembers today, for good reason. This Captain Marvel wasn't only a knockoff of the 1940s Captain Marvel, he ripped off Superman too. Boy, between this and Blue Beetle, we're just covering all the plagiarizing heroes, huh? This Captain Marvel was an alien android powered by an M emblem medallion on his chest, although I'd prefer an M emblem Walsh. You get it. Anyway, the android had been sent to Earth by his creators to escape the atomic destruction of their planet. Huh, sounds familiar, doesn't it?
What are you looking at? Huh?
In another instance of ripping off Superman, he took on the secret identity of a journalist named Roger Winkle, another terrible name. And he borrowed the whole young Ward thing from Batman with his sidekick Billy Baxton, which sounds like the cake boss saying Billy Batson. This Captain Marvel even managed to rip off Archie Comics as he lived in the small idyllic town of Riverview, where he lives with his friends Bucketface and Zactoria, or who even knows. This Captain Marvel also had some of the worst powers in comics history, which is pretty hard to do. He would yell out, "Split," and his limbs would come apart, and then project themselves at his enemies, leaving the good captain just a torso with a head. Kind of like the detachable kid from the Suicide Squad, but a lot worse. This version of Captain Marvel only lasted 5 issues from 1966 to 67, that likely reason being that Marvel Comics was in the middle of their most fertile creative period and wanted the name Captain Marvel badly. Like, really, really badly. Legend has it Marvel paid off MF Enterprises, who was a tiny publisher, for the rights to the name, after which they secured the trademark. Although unconfirmed, the timing certainly holds up, as in late 1967, they introduced Mar-Vell, a Kree warrior who protected the Earth. He would soon gain his own title, which lasted throughout the entire decade of the 1970s. At the same time, DC Comics acquired the rights to produce new material featuring Fawcett's original Captain Marvel, which is pretty ironic, as they once sued that character into obscurity for years. But because Marvel had their own legally trademarked Captain Marvel, DC could not print a comic with Captain Marvel as the title, nor would they likely want to. So, all comics featuring their Captain Marvel were now called Shazam, and his heroic name could only be used inside the comics themselves. To sum up, at this time, there were 2 official heroes named Captain Marvel, one owned by Marvel and one by DC. This wacky scenario would last for 4 whole decades. That is too many decades. While Billy Batson remained as DC's Captain Marvel until the New 52, Marvel's Captain Marvel went through several iterations of heroes using the name. Marvel lasted from 1967 through 1982. Then there was Monica Rambeau, who was introduced as Captain Marvel in the Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 16, and would go by the handle until the mid-90s. She would then go on to use names including Photon, Pulsar, and Spectrum. Immediately after Monica was Mar-Vel's son Genis Vell. After being introduced as Legacy in 1993, he became Captain Marvel in Captain Marvel Volume 3 in 1995, followed by his sister Phyla Vell, who came along in 2003's Captain Marvel Volume 5. Go get a real job, ya Nepo babies! Then there was another Kree warrior named Novar from Earth 2080. He originally went by Marvel Boy and had triple helix DNA that was fused with cockroach genes. Gross! He took on the title of Captain Marvel in 2009's Dark Avengers #1 under advice from Norman Osborn, a famously rational and good dude.
You know how much I sacrificed?
There was even a Skrull named Knurr. You know what, I'm not even gonna try. His name is This, who was brainwashed into believing he was Mar-Vell, and he was Captain Marvel for a brief period of time between 2007's Civil War: The Return and 2008's Captain Marvel series. Eventually, Carol Danvers finally became the Captain Marvel in 2012. Carol started as a supporting character in the Mar-Vell-led book in the late 60s. She got powers of her own with the moniker Ms. Marvel in 1976. But it wasn't long before Carol's Ms. Marvel was a more important and integral part of the Marvel universe than Mar-Vell ever was. She was an Avenger and a trusted member at that. I said it, that's so many M's. In 1982, Mar-Vell died for good, and you'd think that would have been Carol's time to step into the captain role, but not so. It took over 30 years for Carol to officially become Captain Marvel, and in the interim, she went through some stuff, people. The Avengers were not cool to her, look that up. Rogue stole her powers and left her for dead. Then eventually she got her own powers back and then some as Binary, a cosmic entity who joined the space pirates called the Starjammers. Oh, Chris Claremont, never change. Finally, with 2012's relaunch, Carol was the one and only Captain Marvel, still one of the most beloved and important characters in the canon. And this comic series would also serve as the first uncredited appearance of Kamala Khan, aka Ms. Marvel, which used to be Carol's title and now belongs to Kamala. You still with me? Kamala's first credited appearance was in All New Marvel Now, .1, #1 in 2014. Who names these? They need to get better ones. Unlike Monica and Carol, whose powers fall more into the cosmic side of Marvel, Kamala was accidentally exposed to Terrigen mists in the comics, classifying her abilities to stretch as a mutation. A lot different from the light powers the Bengals give her on the Disney Plus series, which we have breakdowns for all of those episodes that you can go watch right now if you really want to get into more of the lore of not just her character, but what we can expect to see in the Marvels as well. And with said The Marvels, we'll have a Ms. Marvel, a Captain Marvel who used to be Ms. Marvel, and Spectrum who used to be Time Warner. I mean Captain Marvel. And Shazam is just Shazam. Forget about him. That does it for the history of Captain Marvel, mostly. But tell us, what do you think? Is Carol Danvers the best Captain Marvel? Will Kamala Khan one day get that title? And why was the 70s Spider-Man show set in an area of LA without any big buildings?
Spider-Man? I didn't know you worked outside New York.
I don't, usually.
Let us know in the comments below, and for more of the latest and greatest in the world of pop culture, stay tuned to Nerdist.com.